My friend Vince Ornato, local Pittsburgh artist, caricature artist, really talented guy, was sent me a message the other day, and he said, he's pointing out to me that the most influential bands in rock seem to be British. I mean, if you think about it, Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, Deep Purple, the Rolling Stones, even the Beatles, Pink Floyd. AC/DC isn't even an American band, right? U2 is Irish. So, what happened? I mean, rock and roll is a uniquely American art form, isn't it? I mean, after all, Elvis is the king. No? So what happened? Did American musicians lose their place in the great rock race? Hells to the no. We're going to talk about it. Get ready to rock out with your talk out. It's the Ludini Rock and Roll Circus. All right, too much moving around there. I went out of focus. You listen to Ludini Rock and Roll Circus. Moms and dads, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to the circus. I am Ludini. I am your ringmaster for this rock and roll ride of mayhem and mischief. So welcome. I have sitting next to me in the co-pilot's chair this evening, the lovely and talented Miss Lily V6.
What's up?
Oh, and that is going to be really loud.
And there's some musica going on.
Strange Love. Take it back a second. All right, there we are. So we got Lily V6 and Keith the Hawk Hawkins is on a little bit of a hiatus for a couple of weeks due to some gigs. And that's what my brother is, a professional musician, and so he needs to go out and earn his living there. So good for him, and we wish him well, and we'll be seeing him here in a couple of weeks. So he's not gone; he's just on a little bit of a rock and roll vacation. Ludini Rock and Roll Circus. You want to go to LouLombardiMusic.com, get more information there. We have all kind of things you can get. We have an awesome private Facebook group. We have free downloads and all kind of fun stuff like that, so check that out. As well as, listen, guys, if you could just do this right now, wherever you're listening, that little button on the side of your device that looks like a little V? That's the share. Just share it wherever you are. Just quickly hit that share button real quick and share it around. I'm also going to ask you to do something else, and we're going to give you a goodie for this. If you'd like to get a free Ludini Rock and Roll Circus T-shirt, and we have several different ones you can pick from. I want you to go to iTunes on your device or on your computer or whatever, and find us, LudiniRockandRollCircus.com, and the little thing that says rate and review. Click that and leave a 5-star and give us a good review. And then send us a screen cap at it. Send it to Lou at LouLombardiMusic.com. Screen cap, photo with your phone, whatever. And we're going to do a drawing at the end of April, and we're going to give away a free T-shirt for that. So please do that. Reviews, iTunes reviews for a podcast are freaking huge. So there's so many things I need to tell you about. And I want to get into tonight's topic because it's freaking huge. But don't forget Wolf's Customs. We talk about these guys every week. I'm wearing the T-shirt tonight, the Wolf Custom. Very fashionable. Go to wolfscustoms.online. Get a custom paint job done on your musical instrument, whatever it is. It will make you look marvelous on stage, as that thing is happening again all around the country and around the world. So get a hold of Chris Thunderwolf Dodson at wolfscustoms.online. He does awesome custom finishing, and they do some other mods and little things like that. So check him out, wolfscustoms.online. Rock Rage Radio, as always, rockrageradio.com. Download the app. You got to have the app to get great guitar-driven rock 24/7, as well as amazing shows like this one and
Hot Licks with Lily 6, Thursdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Time.
See?
All free.
Tons of stuff totally free. Very cool thing. And I'm sure there's things I'm forgetting about. I will talk about Rockin' Pod in the middle break, but that's something that I think you guys would really enjoy too. We'll talk about it later. So tonight's topic, I feel like I need a cup of coffee or something after that. Maybe a shot of one of these amazing whiskeys. Tonight's topic, The Doors and 13 other American rock acts that changed music. That is the official title of it. Of course, I think Lily and I are both going to say something about the Doors at some point, but there's a bunch of other bands, and this was one of those that was really hard to pick. I think I've got like 20 on my list, something like that, because there's just like every time I would think, I would go, oh, wait a minute, that band, and wait a minute, that band. So there's, we got a million of them. We're going to try to pick and choose and try to put together a list of around 13 or so, because, you know, like I said at the beginning, you know, it's really weird. You know, people think of the Beatles and the Stones and all these great bands, but, you know, America was doing some great stuff in music during that classic rock era as well. It took us maybe a beat or two to catch up, but hey, we're here and we're doing our thing and we have some great music to talk about. So, let's go ahead and get into that. I would, as always, we'll go ahead and start with Lily. And you guys know what America is, and you know.
Do we need to explain all that?
She usually starts off with some bio of something, but like
we're not going to do that today.
In 1776, four score.
And 1492. Anyway.
But yeah, in any case, so, and the criteria is. Let's talk about the criteria real quick. We're moving around a lot. Please do not bitch about the focus. It'll come back into focus, I promise. The criteria of this is sort of this. The bands, we try to stick to mostly bands from the first classic rock era, but, you know, with peppering in some of the later cassette tape era bands and then the CD era bands, you know, into maybe early 90s stuff.
Just a smattering.
Try to stay with that early stuff as much as possible. As well as, we really try to stick to bands. I know that people are going to say, well, what about this guy? What about that guy? What about Billy Joel or, you know, whoever? And those people are great. But that's not a band. Your band that functions as a band. We're going to have a couple that are so-and-so and such band. We have one or two of those on there. We really try to keep that to a minimum. The other thing is we need to talk real quick. Let's just get this out of the way. Jimi Hendrix is not on the list. I'm sorry. Yes, Jimi Hendrix is widely influenced, but the members of the band are British.
Not American.
Not American. I ain't no American. I ain't had no America over there in England at that time.
He's American, but they're not American.
He's American. He's only American there. But sort of a honorable mention, or sort of like mentioning Hendrix without mentioning the Jimi Hendrix Experience. It's just, you know, great, but we got to set that aside. So we got to dig a little deeper here. But there's a lot of gold, isn't there, Lily?
Yes.
I mean, there's a lot of gold. When we start talking about these bands, you guys go, oh, yeah. That band was so important. And, you know, and some of these bands you may not personally like, but you got to admit that, like, whoa, like, there's a lot of other people that, like, love those bands and were super influenced by them.
I definitely have a band on my list that's a little later on that I don't like, but I have to give them credit where credit's due. We'll get to that.
Yeah, and I have some of those too as well. So let's go ahead. Let's dive in because this is super fun. And go ahead, Lily. You start.
Let's just start it off with a bang. And my favorite band is Aerosmith. Everyone heard of them, I'm sure. Formed in Boston in 1970. They rooted in blues-based hard rock. They had pop rock, heavy metal, glam metal, rhythm and blues. Referred to as the Bad Boys from Boston or America's Greatest Rock and Roll Band, the primary songwriting team of Tyler and Perry is known as the Toxic Twins, which is kind of fun. It's a great name. They released a string of multi-platinum albums, starting with their debut in 1973. Throughout the 70s, the band toured extensively, charted a dozen Hot 100 singles, including their first, which was Sweet Emotion. I know everybody knows that song. It's on the radio all the time. But by the end of the decade, they were among the most popular hard rock band in the world and developed a following of fans often referred to as the Blue Army, which I did not know they had an army.
All the years of loving Aerosmith, you did
I didn't know that.
I know I did not know it either, but I'm not the Aerosmith fan that Lily is, but go ahead.
That's not a thing I knew about. They did tons of popular music videos featuring Liv Tyler and Alicia Silverstone primarily, as well as other very famous people too. I Don't Want to Miss a Thing. Not one of my favorite songs, but it charted heavily because of the movie Armageddon. They have achieved 21 top 40 hits, 9 number 1 mainstream rock hits, 4 Grammy Awards, 6 American Music Awards. They have fallen from grace for a while there in the like late 70s, early 80s, but they came back thanks to a group called Run DMC. That
well,
helped
they had some issues in the band with
Drugs.
substances, etc.
You know, it happens. It happens. I have seen them 6 times live, and the show is different every single time. They do not incorporate every single song that everybody thinks they do. They do sprinkle in some of the deep cuts in there, which is great. But they have proved to be a major influence themselves on successful bands and musicians, especially the next generation of hard rock and heavy metal bands like Motley Crue, Rat, Guns N' Roses, Tesla, LA Gun, Cinderella, all of those bands, the glam metal scene basically, especially Guns N' Roses, and members of the alternative rock bands such as Nirvana, Mother Love Bone, Pearl Jam, Stone Temple Pilots. The list
She
goes
has like
on.
27 pages of Aerosmith.
I do have 27 pages of Aerosmith because it is my favorite band. They also have a ride at Walt Disney World.
Whoa!
Called the Rock and Roller Coaster, starring Aerosmith.
I mean, if you ever ride at Walt Disney World, like you know, you got to be doing something right.
But they have sold more than 150 million records worldwide, including over 70 million records in the United States alone. So yeah,
well, Aerosmith. I have no issues with Aerosmith one bit.
They're my boys.
I'm gonna go back a little wee bit. This band were the America's competition for the Beatles. And there's another band that begins with B, the Beach Boys. American rock band from Hawthorne, California, formed in 1961. The group's original lineup consisted of brothers Brian Dennis and Carl Wilson with their cousin Mike Love and Al Jardine. Distinguished by their vocal harmonies, adolescent-oriented themes, and musical ingenuity, they are one of the most influential acts of the rock era. They drew on the music of the older pop vocal groups, the 50s rock and roll, black R&B to create their unique sound, and underneath Brian Wilson's direction, often incorporated classical or jazz and even unconventional recording techniques in innovative ways. One of the first self-contained rock groups, the Beach Boys, began as a garage band managed by the Wilsons' father, Murray. And with Brian as the composer, arranger, producer, and de facto leader, in '63 they had their first national hit with Surfin' USA, beginning a string of top 10 singles that reflected a Southern California youth culture, surfing, cars, romance, dubbed the California Sound. They were one of the few American rock bands to sustain their commercial standing during the British invasion. Pet Sounds was just wow. Like Paul McCartney said that when they heard Pet Sounds, he was like, "Oh crap, what are we going to do?" And well, they did Sgt. Pepper's. Well, but 66 Pet Sounds album comes out. Good Vibrations single raised the group's prestige as rock innovators. After scrapping the Smile album in '67, Brian's contributions diminished due to his mental health issues. He quit the touring schedule, but stayed on, working and producing and working with them. But a wildly influential band, way more than just surf. Amazing vocal harmonies, writing, arranging, and they gave the Beatles a run for their money. The Beach Boys. My first introduction to rock and roll was the Beach Boys and Chuck Berry. Those I found those records in my mom's record collection, and I was hooked after that. There was no turning back. So that's my pick. What do you got?
Well, what surprises me about the Beach Boys is I find a lot of people actually don't like them, and I'm like, you have to like at least one song from the Beach Boys, at least one. Like, they're all catchy, they're all fun, they're all, well, I guess they're about love, but they're about sex too.
Yeah, you got the back seats of cars and all that.
And they did sell over 100 million records worldwide.
Important band.
Gotta give it to them.
Yeah. Yep.
So we'll just go ahead and kick it off with a band I saw with Aerosmith once, which was, and I'm sorry, Keith isn't here, Kiss. So we're going to talk about Kiss. American rock band formed in New York City.
Wipe it off with flaming wood!
And there it is. In January 73. Obviously, you know the members, Paul Stanley, Gene Simmons, Ace Frehley, and Peter Criss is the most known and the original guys from the band. They did the stage outfits. The group rose to prominence in the late 70s with their crazy live performances. If you've ever seen them, they incorporate blood, pyrotechnics, flying, crazy drum kits, the whole thing. They had gone through several lineup changes, as I said. Stanley and Simmons are the only two members who have been in the band throughout. One of the most influential bands of all time is one of the best-selling bands of all time, having sold more than 75 million records worldwide, including 21 million certified albums. And they hold the record for the number one gold record award-winning albums as well.
Wow.
They've been classified under genres of hard rock, shock rock, and heavy metal, and glam rock. Most of the 1970s and the first release between 74 and 77, they've used the traditional heavy metal style, but they've also experimented with disco, pop, progressive, from music from the Elder, plus more. It was the sound that sort of laid the groundwork for both arena rock and pop metal, and that dominated the rock in the late 80s. The first review of Kiss by Rolling Stone in 1973 described the band as the American Black Sabbath.
Wow, interesting.
Wouldn't guess that.
That's cool.
The world of concert touring was changed by Kiss. They had the unique design stage sets. Tours got larger, carrying more personnel and equipment. So this gets costly with the costumes and the pyrotechnics and the whole thing. So they also came up with significant expansion of concert merchandising. They literally put their logo on everything. Fake or invisible guitar strings, t-shirts, coffins, shoes, like literally anything. They slapped the logo on everything. This helped pay for these crazy ass tours. So that they were not only super fun to watch, super inspiring, but they were very smart guys. They knew what the hell they were doing. But yeah, there it is.
Gene Simmons is often asked to speak at like business conventions and things like that because of their success. It's mind-blowing. If you've never read the book, if you're in business and you've never read the book Kiss and Make Up, you should read it. There's some great nuggets in there of like business stuff that will just be like, whoa, the dude knew what the hell he was doing. Paul Stanley too. They were definitely partners. They were definitely partners on the whole thing. Good pick. They're on my list as well. I'm going to pick a band that I do not believe is on Lily's list, but man, this you can't like go through a radio dial. I think if we turned a local radio dial on right now, there would be one Creedence Clearwater Revival song being played. This band is just so freaking pervasive. American rock band, recorded, performed from 67 to 72. The band initially consisted of lead vocalist, lead guitarist, primary writer John Fogerty, his brother Tom Fogerty, Stu Cook, and Doug Clifford. These members had played together since 59, first as the Blue Velvets, and then as the Gollywogs.
Oh.
Glad they went through a name change there.
They needed to do that.
Yes, CCR's musical style encompassed roots rock, swamp rock, blues rock, southern rock, country rock. Despite their San Francisco Bay Area origin, the band played a southern rock style with lyrics about bayous, bayous, catfish, and the Mississippi River, and other popular elements of southern United States like iconography, very similar to what a Canadian band was doing. The band. They were sort of obsessed with the South as well. The band's songs rarely dealt with romantic love, concentrating instead on political and socially conscious lyrics about such topics as the Vietnam War. Performed at Woodstock. They disbanded acrimoniously in 72 after 4 years of chart-topping success. Fogerty had officially left the previous year. John was at odds with the remaining members over matters of business and artistic control, all of which resulted in subsequent lawsuits among the former bandmates. These songs are freaking everywhere. They're in tons of movies, television shows, car commercials, just like you have heard, I don't care who you are, you know a Creedence Clearwater. It's like the Beach Boys. You know a Creedence Clearwater Revival song.
I can't go to a bar without hearing Susie Q. It doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter.
Exactly. They had a real love of Motown and soul music. Big hits with covers of things like Heard It Through the Grapevine. Just insane, and a very unique, so distinctive, right, Lily? Mm-hmm. In 2 seconds, CCR.
Yeah.
You just know it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in the consciousness of this country. It is like everything. Like I said, you can't go down a radio dial and not hear a CCR song. Just for that reason alone, I mean, they got to be on the list. So my pick is Creedence.
That's a good one. I'm going to go another direction here and go with the Ramones.
Yeah, I got them. Good band.
American punk rock band formed in New York City. Actually, the New York City neighborhood of
Well,
Forest
there's
Hills.
another example. Sex Pistols. You know,
There's
British.
that.
Yep.
They are often cited as the first true punk rock group, despite achieving only limited commercial success. Initially, I want to talk about sex, obviously.
Sex. They created sex.
The band was highly influential in the U.S. and many other countries. All of the band members adopted pseudonyms ending with the surname Ramone, so they all had the last name Ramone.
You mean they weren't all brothers?
They were not, because none of them were biologically related. Crazy. They were inspired by Paul McCartney of the Beatles, who would check into hotels as Paul Ramone. They performed 2,300 concerts, touring virtually nonstop for 22 years. Can't imagine why they're all dead now. Recognition of...
Really? There's not one?
I don't think anybody's alive. I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure none of them are alive now. Recognition of the band's importance built over the years. So initially they started out like any other punk band would start out, not very well known, but then sort of caught on. On March 18, 2002, the original four members and Tommy's replacement on the drums, Marky Ramone, were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame on the first year of eligibility, which is super surprising to me that they even got in. Joey had passed away by then. In 2011, the group was awarded a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award. Their loud, fast, straightforward musical style was influenced by pop music that the band members grew up listening to in the 50s and 60s. It was also a reaction against the heavy produced, often bombastic music that dominated the pop charts in the 70s. They sort of wanted to move away from that and go to what they were bored.
Yeah. Sound, yeah.
So they were bored and they wanted to try something back that they are used to. Joey once said, as leaders in the punk rock scene, the Ramones' music was usually identified with that label, while some have categorized their style as pop punk or power pop. But in the 1980s, the band sometimes veered into hardcore punk territory, as can be heard on Too Tough to Die. But they were super fun, and they're in the movie Rock and Roll High School. I mean, the whole movie's about them.
Rock and Roll High School.
Which I love.
And
PJ Soul's
another
in
band
it.
you probably know a one Ramone song, at least. You know one.
You have to know one.
You have to know one. This band here, I don't know. I'm not. I don't know what it is. Like, it just is coincidence. It's not that I'm in a mood for Southern rock or anything tonight. But this band, Leonard Skinner. I mean, come on. I mean, every country act starting about 1987 through about 2005 was just basically, let's do Skinner. I mean, just let's do Skinner. That's what they were doing.
It's fun.
That they had a band, so that they became country music. 20 years after they were a rock band, but American rock band formed in Jacksonville, Florida. There's another Florida band, I believe. I think I'm going to talk about, and maybe Lily's going to talk about later on as well. A group originally formed as My Backyard in '64 with Ronnie Van Zant, Gary Rossington, Alan Collins. The band spent 5 years touring small venues under various names with several lineup changes. Before deciding on Leonard Skinner, band released the first album in '73, having settled on a lineup included addition of Leon Wilkerson, Billy Powell, great keyboard player. A interesting thing was that I just learned this about Freebird. Nobody realized that Billy Powell was a classically trained piano player.
Oh.
And he was just playing something, and they were like, "What are you doing?" And like, we gotta put that on this. We gotta put this on the album, and it became the big introduction to the song "Freebird," which is in the rock pantheon. Like, it's Freebird's Stairway to Heaven, right?
It is.
Those are like,
Let me talk about this just for 1 second.
Sure.
You go to so I just put on at the Subalpine a super heavy metal show, and people were screaming "Play Freebird." I'm like, stop yourself. But yeah, it's one of those things.
Of course, one of the things that immortalized them, and like, it's sad but true. Maybe we're going to talk about another band later with a reference to that. They had a terrible accident. The lead singer and a couple other guys, Casey Gaines, were killed, and this just only added to the mystique of the whole situation, right? I mean, like, they died, and so like it's a whole thing now. I mean, there's a great homage to Leonard Skinner called the Southern Rock Opera. It's by the Drive-By Truckers, and you can find it on Spotify or whatever. Listen to it. It's an homage to the Skinner story. So there's a rock opera written,
That's fun.
dedicated to Leonard Skinner. Amazing, right? Since then, they either reunited and blah blah blah, and they've got this whole like Fox News redneck thing going on, which I think is kind of annoying. But you can't deny Skinner. You gotta, just huge. And there's a lot of bands later on that came out that definitely owe a lot to Leonard Skinner. There's a guy maybe you heard of named Zakk Wylde. Huge Skinner, hugely influenced by Skinner, as well as the Allman Brothers. Modern bands like Black Stone Cherry, very heavily influenced. Even Texas Hippie Coalition. I don't think you have those type of bands without Leonard Skinner. And just the fact that you're probably sick of Leonard Skinner is the reason why they are an important, one of the most important and influential American rock bands.
But also, Lou and I watched a very cool movie about the plane crash that Artemis Pyle, the drummer, put on called Street Survivors. So if you want to check that out, it is on Amazon. But it is a very good movie. It's a different sort of view of what happened, but done very well.
Yeah. So anyways, I know that there's a lot of people that have a love-hate relationship with Skinner, but I think you got to give the devil his due on that one. But go ahead. What do you got?
Well, we got some comments.
All right, cool.
So let's do that. Bill Damiano's watching, and he said Kiss also had condoms. And I knew that, but, I couldn't name everything they done. It's only an hour show. I also put their blood in red ink for a Marvel comic book about them. Bill Thomas said he saw the Ramones 5 times.
Wow.
Also, Bill Damiano said the Van Zants are king of Southern rock, country rock, 38 Special, Skinner.
Yeah.
There's that. So anyway.
Charlie Daniels, all of that.
The whole thing.
So, yeah. Then since we're taking a little pause here, I want to tell you guys about a really cool event coming up 4 months, 6 days, 7 hours, 29 minutes, and 26 seconds from now. August 6th to the 8th, Rockin' Pod Nashville. This is a great opportunity for you to come out and meet, at least me. I hope Lily's going to be there.
Making sure I can get off work.
Meet the circus. I know Keith has a wedding that weekend. But it is a podcasting convention, primarily rock podcasters. This is very, very cool. There's going to be a lot of different bands playing. There's going to be a lot of events around the city of Nashville that are associated with it, with the thing. It's a giant expo with a bunch of different podcasters. There'll be tons of memorabilia, lots of rock stars walking around, signing autographs, doing interviews. People like Billy Sheehan, Ron Keel, who I think occasionally listens to our podcast.
He does.
Jason Bieler, Tommy Scotch. Is that how you say his name? Scooch?
I actually don't know how to say his name, but I know who he is.
I shouldn't have said that on the air. And Don Jameson.
Who's hysterical.
He's awesome. What was the show?
Metal
Show. Yeah, great dude. I'm really looking forward to meeting him. So that all takes place August 6th or 8th. You go to Nashville Rock and npodexpo.com for more information, tickets, etc. We just had to give a shout out to that. So let's get back to our regularly scheduled program already in progress.
All right, so I'm going back to the punk scene and somebody who predates the Ramones, actually, and I do want to give them a little bit of a shout out because they are nominated for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame this year, and I think people don't know enough about them. Stop. People don't know enough about them, so they're not even going to get recognized, but it is the New York Dolls. American rock band formed in New York City in 1971, along with the Velvet Underground, which nobody really seems to like, and the Stooges. They were one of the first bands of the early punk rock scenes. According to the Encyclopedia of Popular Music, the New York Dolls predated the punk and glam metal movements and were one of the most influential rock bands of the last 20 years. They influenced the Sex Pistols, Kiss, the Ramones, Guns N' Roses, the Damned, and the Smiths. According to AllMusic editor Stephen Thomas Earlywine, the New York Dolls developed the original style of hard rock that presaged both punk and heavy metal music and drew on elements such as dirty rock and roll of the Rolling Stones and the archaic noise of the Stooges. The glam rock of David Bowie and T-Rex and the girl and girl group pop music. They were one of the ones who did dress and drag on stage. They had heels on, makeup, the whole thing. It was sort of a little bit of a joke how they were dressed at that time. But who else did that? Kiss. So there's that. They are credited for being punk rock before there was a term for it. I did see them one time when they got back together in I guess it was about 2012-ish.
Yeah.
They still had pretty good energy on the stage. They opened for Motley Crue and Poison, which I found kind of funny.
That's cool.
But they have since disbanded again. But I do think they deserve a little bit of credit because I don't think we would have things like the Ramones without the
I think
New York
that's
Dolls.
an interesting choice. I thought about the New York Dolls, but I did not put them on my list. But they did cross my mind. We have to talk about the Doors.
Do it.
American rock band from Los Angeles, 65. Of course, Jim frickin' Morrison, Ray frickin' Manzarek, Robbie frickin' Krieger, and John frickin' Densmore.
They all have the same middle name.
These guys were they all have the same middle name. I mean, these guys at the time were kind of musicians. They were all really talented instrumentalists with this guy out front who was poet, rock star, rebel, gang leader, just like absolutely everything. They took their name from Aldous Huxley's book, The Doors of Perception, referenced, which itself is a reference by a quote by the poet and artist William Blake. After signing with Elektra, The Doors and Morrison released 6 albums in 5 years, some of which are considered among the greatest of all time, including The Doors, Strange Days, and L.A. Woman. They were one of the most successful bands during that time. By 72, The Doors had sold over 4 million albums domestically and nearly 8 million singles. Morrison died in uncertain circumstances in 71. The band continued as a trio for a little bit, but disbanding in 73. Released more albums in the 70s here and there. They did do a very cool thing with, I believe, in association with VH1, where they had different vocalists who loved the Doors music and were influenced by Jim Morrison get up and they would each sing a Doors song. Eddie Vedder did it. I believe Scott Stapp was on there as well. But the guy who was the real standout was Ian Ashbury from The Cult, and they actually ended up going on tour with him, singing the songs. I did not see it, but I did hear that it was very freaking cool.
Okay. I'd have to probably look for that.
They made no pretenses that he's Jim Morrison. They didn't. Ian was Ian, and he just sang the songs, with his amazing voice and his great stage presence. And but if you get a chance to check that, I'm sure it's on YouTube. It's very cool.
An interesting thing
Scott
too.
Weill and Perry Farrell were also part of that VH1
I could
special.
see that.
Yes.
I can see that. Another fun thing to add to that too is they actually had sort of 2 revivals after the band decided to call it quits. First was the Doors movie came out in 1991.
Oh, yeah.
And everybody was
all of a sudden,
loving it.
And you know what? And then and that's interesting because that's when the grunge, all of a sudden the grunge thing starts happening, and you get Eddie Vedder and those guys.
And Val Kilmer did an amazing job. The band, however, hated it. They think they painted Jim Morrison with a bad picture. I think it probably was accurate, but that's just me. I wasn't there, so I don't know. Anyway, the other one was, let me find it here. I know I wrote it down. The first beginning in the late 70s, there was a sustained revival interest in the Doors which created a new generation of fans. The origin was traced to the release of the album An American Prayer in 78, which contained a live version of Roadhouse Blues that received considerable airplay on album-oriented rock radio stations. And in 1979, the song The End was featured in Apocalypse Now. So that whole album blew up again, and it sold better that time than it did the first time. So they had 2 revivals, one in the late 70s and one in the 90s.
It's like the revival with Queen.
Yeah.
They got a couple revivals, which is very freaking cool.
Every time a new thing comes out like that, that you can't find an album in a damn radio or a music store at all. It's sort of annoying.
Speaking of those type of revivals, and I'm kind of late to this, but apparently there is a reaction video from some young kids to Phil Collins' "In the Air Tonight."
Really?
And that ended up bringing that song back onto the charts because everybody wanted to hear the song again, and it got back on the charts. So that's very cool that in this era that can happen.
I'm happy about it.
I am too. I'm going to whose turn is it? Your turn.
It's my turn.
I'm sorry, you were talking. You wanna do these?
no, it's okay.
I know you're going to talk about these guys.
I have him. Do you want me to talk
No,
about
talk
him?
about whoever you want.
Well, I'm gonna talk about the band that I don't really like, but I think they super deserve to be on this list. Is Nirvana. Love them or hate them, which I do not love them. American rock band formed in Aberdeen, Washington, 1987. Their success popularized alternative rock, and they were often referenced. I can't even talk today. I can't imagine why. Often referenced as the figurehead band of Generation X, aka the Slacker generation. Their music maintains a popular following and continues to influence modern rock and roll culture. In the late 80s, Nirvana established itself as part of the Seattle grunge scene, which we all know I love. With the album Bleach, Nirvana found unexpected mainstream success with Smells Like Teen Spirit, the first single from the landmark second album, Nevermind, a cultural phenomenon of the 1990s. The album went on to be certified diamond by the RIAA and is often credited as of ending the dominance of the hair metal scene, which is why I don't love Nirvana.
I don't love Nirvana.
They are characterized by their punk aesthetic. Nirvana's fusion pop melodies with noise combined with their themes of objection and social alienation brought them global popularity because this was the time when somebody or the whole world needed a music change, and they brought that music change. So more so was to like the sadness and the depression of you wiping all of your eyes on those $1 million paychecks as opposed to partying and getting laid with your $1 million paychecks.
You know, though, that they did that. I think I always thought that was the biggest freaking scam of grunge,
right?
Was that like these guys pretended this and they were like doing drugs and banging chicks.
Oh,
and
they
were
know.
doing the whole thing. Come on now.
But by 2009, Nirvana record sales were over 75 million worldwide, making them one of the best-selling bands of all time. And they only had 3 years as a mainstream act. So there's that, because Kurt Cobain, quote-unquote, killed himself.
I know. I'm feeling you.
Oh, and they are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to. I think you have to mention Nirvana. I mean, you're just kind of like,
it's kind of a thing.
Yeah, I mean, there is one band that I refuse to talk about because they're shit, and that is Velvet Underground.
I know you don't like them.
I actually like Lou Reed, but the Velvet Underground was fucking stupid. Sorry. If you like the Velvet Underground, you can listen to another podcast.
I only like the Velvet Underground because Andy Warhol had a hand in their album covers, and that's the only reason I really like them.
That's just silly.
And Andy Warhol's my favorite artist of all time.
You know, I can understand why you could say, "Oh, I like the album covers," but liking the band,
I mean, that's different.
Yeah,
I like the album covers. I like the banana. So
yeah, she likes the banana. She likes the banana. Don't they all?
We don't all.
I'm going to talk about this band, American heavy metal band, Metallica.
Metallica.
We're trying to look past our personal prejudices here and go now these bands are important. And I know, Lily, that's not one of your favorite bands either, but you kind of got to give the devil their due.
As much as I don't want to, I will do it.
Man, I mean, and these people that are crying about Metallica, come on, man. They brought so many fans into heavy metal. There were so many people that didn't know what heavy metal was. And I know you don't like the Black Album, but because of the Black Album, people went back, and this is a proven fact, people went back and listened to Kill 'Em All and Master of Puppets and all that stuff. They went back and listened to and Justice for All and all those things. Okay? So get over yourself. And they also dragged all the metal with them. I mean, this is one of the reasons why bands like Slayer and everything rose to such prominence, okay? Because they were riding on those coattails because people heard this. Well, what is this band? This is another reason why Anthrax became such a major band. These guys just dragged heavy metal into the mainstream and said, you're going to just freaking like it.
They made it super commercialized. Which was great.
They were commercialized, but they also, you had that residual, you had that trickle down where all of a sudden people that didn't even know about this music became exposed to it, and a lot of people became metal fans because of Metallica. I'm not going to go into their history. Y'all freaking know who Metallica is, right?
We do.
But if you don't like them, that's one thing you don't like, but you cannot deny the influence they had. And I do not think that metal would be going around and having these giant festivals like not as much in America, but in Europe and South America and in Japan, giant metal festivals. And I think a lot of that is owed to Metallica because of their success, because of them just bringing awareness to this music, a music that was kind of like, I mean, I love Iron Maiden. Freaking love. I love. To me, they're a better band. I like them personally better. But you cannot deny, even Metallica probably helped Iron Maiden to some degree because, again, just the idea of exposing mainstream culture to metal. All of a sudden, like, wow, what is heavy? These guys, and there's all this other cool stuff you might want to check out. That's it. That's all I'm going to say about it. Metallica.
Done. Stamped. Well, next I'm going to talk about Van Halen.
Van Halen, dudes!
Formed in Pasadena, California in 1974. Credited with restoring hard rock to the forefront of the music scene. They are well known for their energetic live shows and for the virtuosic... how do you say that?
This. Just like that. Say it like that.
Virtuosic, which is wrong. Forefront of the music scene, Van Halen was known for the energetic, I already said that, talent of Prodigy lead guitarist Eddie Van Halen. Van Halen's musical style has been described as hard rock, heavy metal, and glam metal. Even with vocalist changes, we went from Sammy Hagar, Gary Cherone, David Lee Roth. Even with all of those changes, the band still stayed like right up here. There were changes made. The sound was different, but they were still like. Yeah,
and whenever they packed freaking stadiums,
didn't even matter.
Like it didn't matter what was going on.
They were they were still successful throughout the changes that they made.
I mean, I honestly, if they would have, not had the issues, the internal issues, and that had a lot to do with Eddie's drinking issues. They could have seriously just never. They could have been like Kiss in a sense that like just never stopped.
Right.
Just can't. Forever. U2 is another band that just kind of seems to like never stopped. Just go out and play. What book this? We'll book the Guga Stadium for 6 nights in a row. Like, Van Halen is like, they were like, they could have been doing that, but they had they succumbed to some of the pressures.
There were some things that went on that we don't even know, but that's fine. They were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2007. As of March 2019, they are the 20th on the RIAA list of best-selling artists in the United States. The band has sold over 56 million albums and more than 80 million, or 56 in the U.S., 80 million worldwide, making them one of the best-selling groups of all time. As of 2007, Van Halen is one of 5 rock bands with 2 studio albums to sell more than 10 million copies in the U.S. and is on the list for the most multi-platinum albums by an American band. They have charted 13 number 1 hits, and VH1 ranked them as 7 on the list of top 100 rock artists of all time for good reason. And I'm more of a fan of the Hagar era, but that's just me. I've never seen the Hagar era. I've only seen the David Lee Roths, but...
Well, it's irrelevant because it's Van Halen.
I know, it is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. But,
I mean, you made a great point when you said it. It was like people didn't care. It's Van Halen. I don't care. Whatever.
They went and saw...
Is Eddie Van Halen playing guitar? Alex Van Halen? Yeah,
that's all that matters.
Yeah.
And
Van Halen in it? Yeah, we're good.
Unfortunately, we did lose him in October 2020 from cancer. Sadness all over the world.
Total switch gears here. We're going to to go way back in time, and we're going to take crank the volume down for some mellow sounds. The sounds of Crosby, Stills, Nash, and of course, the irrepressible maniac himself, Neil Young. Now, Neil Young is
who again
Canadian,
I'm not a fan of, but that's okay.
But really great vocal group. Had formed in '68. They found out that they could harmonize really well together as members from Buffalo, Springfield, and the Hollies kind of came together. The first album, Crosby, Stills, and Nash, without Young, was released in '69. Big hits, Sweet Judy Blue Eyes, Marrakesh Express. In order to tour the album, they hired drummer Dallas Taylor, session bassist Greg Reeves. They still needed a keyboardist. Ahmet Ergen suggested Neil Young, not a keyboardist, who played with Stills in Buffalo, Springfield. So there's this heritage with Crosby, Stills that kind of they're a super group is really what we would call that. They started to tour. The first album with Young was Deja Vu, reached number 1 in several international charts in 1970, remains their best-selling album, going on to sell over 8 million copies with 3 hit singles. 4 singles were released from the album, including Woodstock, Teach Your Children, and Our House. The group's second tour, which produced live album Four-Way Street, was fraught with arguments between Young and Taylor, which resulted in Taylor being replaced by John Barbada. We don't need to get on into all that. Again, another one of these bands that's just irrepressible everywhere. They've like soaked into the DNA, really brought vocal harmony to the forefront. Not just vocal harmony the way that like maybe a boy band or something would do it, but they brought together these four songwriters, like serious dudes, like poets, like did you consider? And so just the fact that these guys worked together and created this amazing vocal sound and Woodstock band, etc. I think that they are deserving. I really had a hard time, and I don't have these ranked in a particular order, but these guys, Santana and the Jefferson Airplane, were all kind of competing in my mind for this kind of spot here, like this kind of like hippie.
I sort of feel like you picked the right one.
And I just kind of, they're all like have their own qualities, but I just felt that because these guys like were just such powerful songwriters, and I also kind of wanted to crowbar Neil Young, even though Neil Young is not American. He is an American citizen now.
So it counts. I'm not a fan of
So
Young,
we're just going to kind of leave it at that. Again, some of these really don't need a whole lot of talk, right?
Nah,
we know who
I
the
mean,
hell
we
they
don't
are.
need to know.
Okay, so there we are on that.
And
Sebastian
goes
Young.
the dynamite.
Exactly.
Next on my list, I'm going to go a little, not new, but newer than we've been talking. So Guns N' Roses, American hard rock band, LA, 85. They signed with a major record label within 8 months of the band's inception and topped the national sales charts weeks after garnering late hours airplay on MTV. Appetite for Destruction is the highest-selling debut album of all time in the United States. Peers of the band in the music industry often spoke highly of the band. Joe Perry stated that the band was the first group to remind him of Led Zeppelin. Ozzy Osbourne stated that GNR could have been the next Rolling Stones if the classic lineup stayed together. Country musician Steve Earle stated that in 1989, the Guns N' Roses are what every LA band pretends to be. The music of Guns N' Roses is a fusion punk rock, blues rock, heavy metal, hard rock, and hair metal band. Guns N' Roses are influenced by has influenced many modern rock bands such as Fall Out Boy, Avenged Sevenfold, Mother Love Bone, Buck Cherry, Hinder, a whole bunch of them. I'm not going to name them all. They were inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2012 in the first year of eligibility. The group is one of the world's best-selling bands of all time, having sold more than 100 million records worldwide, half of that being in the U.S.
Whoa, Nelly.
So there's that.
How many more do you have on your list?
I just have one more.
Okay. I'm looking at my list, and I just feel like mine kind of sucks.
This doesn't suck. My next one is kind of like a meh.
Okay. I'm gonna do one, and like I said, we really tried to keep like solo artists out of the situation. So I'm kind of cheat.
Just doesn't matter at this point.
It's the E Street Band. Come on, come on. Really? Do I have to say anything else? Gary Talent, Roy Bataan, Max Weinberg, Steve Van Zandt, Nels Lofgren, Patty Scalfield. Look. Springsteen's band is as iconic as he is, and I don't think. And Springsteen has done records without the E Street Band, and they're solid. They're okay, but when he gets together with these guys, and of course the big man, Clarence. I apologize, Clarence Clemens, of course the big man. When he, when those guys get together, it's a whole thing. It's an insane wall of sound. It sounds like an orchestra. When you listen to something like the track "Born to Run," I'm often reminded of some of like Brian Wilson's production with the Beach Boys, except he's using an orchestra, and these are 6 people, something like that, standing in a studio. Unfreaking real. I don't think that you have the impact. And now, some hardcore Springsteen fans out there might argue with me, but man, do you really have the impact of Jungle Land without that band? Or even Born to Run? Do you have that? Max Weinberg's playing on Born in the USA is just so freaking there. You know, it just really carries this. It's like basically it's like a 2-chord song, and it's a giant hit, and it's that groove, and it's the way those guys could play together. When Clarence Clemens comes in on a song like Trapped, when that saxophone starts wailing, like it is just a whole other. It just takes Bruce's music to a whole other thing, and I think there's a lot of bands that were definitely Springsteen influenced. I mean, one of the things that Liv Tyler's stepdad, Todd Rundgren was going for on the Meatloaf album was they were going for that for him and help me out, Steinman.
Oh my gosh.
wanted to get that Springsteen wall of sound, and it's essentially Springsteen's band playing on that Meatloaf album. That's essentially it, minus Steve Van Zandt on guitar. Todd Rundgren is playing guitar on that album. So this band is just out of freaking sight. Whether you like Springsteen or not, you know, you got to give the devil his due, and that sound just pervaded, and he never really left. He does Born to Run. It's gigantic. He doesn't really go away, but then Born in the USA comes out, and then he really never goes away for a really long time. And then then they do The Rising in 2000, which is like, if you haven't heard The Rising in a long time, go back and listen to it. Absolutely, it is exactly what we come to love about that band, about Bruce Springsteen. So, The Boss, the E Street Band, that's all I got to say.
And there's that.
And boom goes the dynamite. So what's your last one, Big Lily?
My last one is actually going to be a female-fronted band, which is Heart. And actually, Heart was a thing before the women were in the band. They formed in '67 in Seattle. The girls didn't come in until the '70s, the Wilson sisters. They were mostly successful when the Wilson sisters came into the whole mix of the things. The core members were included in the band's 2013 induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They rose to fame with music influenced by hard rock and heavy metal, as well as folk music. And they do cross multiple genres, folk rock to glossy AOR. The band's popularity declined in the 80s because a lot of people didn't really like the music in the 80s. I am an 80s Heart fan, so I don't really care what y'all say. But they have sold over 35 million records worldwide, not too shabby. 22.5 million albums in the U.S. It's placed top 10 albums on the Billboard. In 1970s, 80s, 90s, and 2010s. In his, who in the hell am I talking about? Jake Brown's book, Heart in the Studio, described the band as beginning a revolution for women in music, breaking genre barriers and garnering critical acclaim. As quoted by Lizzie Hale of Hailstorm, Heart were the first female-fronted band I heard and was influenced by. I had heard Heart and was like, oh, singing like that as a girl is actually a thing. So I have to include women when I can. But the Wilson sisters have been active in the Seattle music scene for decades and influenced many musicians from the region, including bands of the grunge era. Artists that have used their Bad Animals studio, including Neil Young, REM, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, and Alice in Chains. So some of the bands that they influenced have used their studio, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think too that, like you mentioned, Lizzie Hale, and like Heart sets the groundwork for all the sort of, you know, girls rocking out. What's the band that we were talking about last week? The real
Plush.
Plush, you know, pretty reckless, Evanescence. You know, even like Alanis Morissette and people like that owe a bit to Heart. You know,
Yeah, it definitely wasn't a thing for women to be like
real rockers.
the guitarists or fronting the band,
Yeah.
and they did both. So.
Yeah. You know, yeah, technically, you know, you could say Janis Joplin or whatever, but in terms of like being a band and being, you know, staying as a band, I definitely think you got to give the Heart people their due. My last pick here is real quick. I had the Grateful Dead. You know, again, I'm trying to look past like some of my personal kind of feeling. I don't hate the Grateful. I used to hate the Grateful Dead. If you search it, I wrote an article called "Why I Hate the Grateful Dead." I no longer hate the Grateful Dead, and I've grown to like really appreciate their music. But still not like one of my favorite bands. American band formed in '65 in Palo Alto, California, known for its eclectic style, fusing elements of rock, folk, country, jazz, bluegrass, gospel, psychedelic rock, live performance. These guys also invent the jam thing, for better or for worse. I know some of you people have issues with the jam thing out there. created the whole Deadhead culture. In many ways, kind of what Kiss did in some ways with this sort of like whole culture around and everybody wanting to follow the band around and everything like that. But just a completely different vibe. The various influences were distilled into a diverse psychedelic whole that made the Grateful Dead the pioneering godfathers of the jam world. The band was ranked 57th by Rolling Stone magazine, the greatest artists of all time. The band was elected to Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in '94, and recording of their May '77 performance at Cornell University's Beacon Hall was added to the National Recording Registry of the Library of Congress. Okay, so that alone, your band makes it into the Library of Congress.
Kind of a thing.
That puts you in the running, I think. Unfortunately, we lost Jerry Garcia. The founding members were Jerry Garcia, Bob Weir, Ron McKernan, Phil Lesh, Bill Kreutzmann. Keith is going to correct me on that. Members of the Dead had played together in various San Francisco bands, including Mother McCree's Uptown Jug Champions, Warlocks. Lesh was the last member to join. So that's the classic lineup. People kind of came and went here, but really what kicked the band in the ass was the death of Jerry Garcia. Jerry kind of was sort of the face. That's kind of what people think of when they think of the Grateful Dead. And it was just very, it just kind of put the kibosh on the whole thing. However, because people love the vibe so much, they bring in guys like Warren Haynes to play with them. They're different like great players. Bruce Hornsby becomes a kind of in and out member of the band, and they create these tours. They tour as the other ones. They tour as the Dead, and they still have this giant thing that people just absolutely love. This amazing vibe. And one of the things that set them apart was while so many bands were very protective of the copyrights of their concerts and things like that, the Dead actually encouraged recording, and even once they saw it was going to become a thing, they actually had recording areas set up for people to bring their recording equipment, and people traded the tapes around and everything. Unheard of. Completely unheard of. A very grassroots way to kind of get your music around, and probably has a lot to do with their success and the fact that the reason why they packed so many like fairgrounds, I don't mean played the fair like they played. No, they would pack the entire fair like
you weren't walking around.
Yeah,
to see the
like
hogs.
30,000 people kind of thing. That's kind of what they would do. I don't think that you can
open air version of the stadium.
I don't think that you can kind of compete with that. They're also kind of known for their experimentation with drugs and kind of getting people's minds to kind of open. We mentioned the Doors as well, kind of having that vibe. These guys like just kind of took that to a whole other level. I don't think you can. I think we got to throw the Grateful Dead up there. We have and I have a bunch of others. I don't know if we want to comment. I'm not going to give the histories of these bands or anything. I'm just going to do quick honorable mentions. And if you want to throw a couple in, you can. Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. The Eagles. I hate the fucking Eagles. Steely Dan and Chicago. The Talking Heads. So just a few. Journey. I threw just because of the melodicism and the way they kind of brought that in, and I think it had a lot to do with what came after in the 80s with the glam rock stuff. Is there any that you're kind of think off the top of your head that might?
I
maybe
mean,
kind of
like
an
Prince and the Revolution.
Is
always a good one. And this is one for metal people, Slayer. So that's who I have.
yeah. So I mean, we could
we could go all night on this.
We could go all night, but I think we have a pretty good list of folks that were really important and sort of demonstrated sort of our point at the beginning here that like, yeah. You have your Beatles and your Stones, but we got a few things going on.
We got things too.
We do.
We're cool too.
Happy birthday to Frankie Lane. #1 single, I Believe. Happy birthday to Slow Hand himself, Eric Clapton.
Not American,
but happy birthday to him. Happy birthday to Jim Dandy, Southern rock band, Black Oak, Arkansas. #1 hit, Jim Dandy.
I love that song so much.
Singing it by himself. Ray Styles of the Tubes. I was just listening to She's a Beauty. It's a great song. Oh, you can't touch this. MC Hammer, happy birthday. Happy birthday to Tracy Chapman. And you want to get in her fast car? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, say no more, say no more. Oh, my God. My heart will go on.
Will it
Celine, my heart on will go on. Celine Dion. That's her friend. Dion. Celine Dion. Happy birthday, Celine Dion. Who else? We got any other? Oh, Nora Jones.
Oh.
Yeah.
I like her.
Yeah. Great singer-songwriter. So happy birthday to all y'all. Don't have too much time for this day in music, but we had to send a few birthday shout-outs. Lily, when can we hear your show again?
My show is Thursdays on Rock Rage Radio, Hot Licks with Lily 6 p.m. Eastern Time to 8.
Okay, and a shout-out to Wolf's Customs. As always, go to wolfscustoms.online and get that custom job done on your musical instrument. Please go to iTunes and give us a review. When you do the review, send us a picture, screen cap or whatever to lou@loulombardimusic.com, and we're going to put you in a drawing at the end of April for a free t-shirt. rockrageradio.com. You want to go there, download the app. It's totally free. I'm forgetting somebody. Oh, real quick, one more time, Rockin' Pod. Go to Nashville Rockin' Pod expo.com and get hooked up with all that stuff. Our website right now is loulombardimusic.com. Free download stuff. My band has been in the studio. We've got new music coming out. I have some solo music coming out. A lot of cool stuff happening. So you want to check all that out. Guys, it isn't all about the England. I love England. My buddy Kerry J.K., British dude. England's awesome. But America was able to get in on that first wave of the big classic rock and really hold its own, as I think we've demonstrated this evening.
I agree. It was a good show.
Absolutely. All right, guys, have a great one. We'll catch you all on the next Ludini Rock and Roll Circus. Take care, guys.